Good evening, everyone. It is 6 p.m. on November the 12th, Tuesday, 2024, and I will call to order the regular meeting of the Millwood City Council. Lisa, could you take the roll, please?
Yes. Councilmember Vesey? Present. Councilmember Culler?
Here.
Councilmember Van Hees?
Here.
Councilmember Sander?
Present.
Councilmember Stravens?
Here.
Mayor Freeman?
Present. Let the record reflect that we have a full contingent of our council members tonight, and all are in person, so we have a quorum established for the business before us. So at this time, I'd like to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance tonight. I'll take that one. Oh, sorry about that, Sean. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you very much. So, at this time, our item before us is approval of tonight's meeting agenda. Does any council member wish to make any changes or amendments to tonight's agenda as presented? Seeing or hearing none, do I have a motion on tonight's agenda?
I'll make a motion to approve tonight's consent agenda.
No, just the agenda.
Agenda.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Seeing or hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none opposed, tonight's agenda is approved unanimously. And this moves us to our local agency reports and presentations. It is not, we do not have anybody from either SVFD or the Sheriff's Department tonight, or no other presentations. Oh, Fire Department. Did you? Okay, thank you. Just making sure. So we will move on at this point to our other presentations tonight. First up is a presentation by the chair of the Millwood Historic Preservation Commission, Chris Major. Ms. Major.
All right, thank you. My name is Chris Major, and my address is 9605 East Fairview Court, so not too far from here. And so I really appreciate Council and Mayor for inviting me to talk a little bit about our Historic Preservation Commission. A lot of people, when they think about Millwood, and I'm sure you'll all agree, is that the history, especially expressed through its built environment, makes our community unique and very charming. But we do have a historic district that's recognized by the National Register of Historic Places as well as the State Register of Historic Places. But if you live in a historic building, you know that it is neither easy to maintain nor inexpensive to take care of. And so next slide. So in 2014, Millwood pursued and was designated as a certified local government. And that is a distinction through the Washington Department of Archaeology and Historic Preservation. And part of that CLG is to create a preservation commission, of which I am part of. And so next slide. And the Historic Preservation Commission is tasked with the following, and this is in code and ordinance, and I've paraphrased it greatly because it's very wordy. But basically, we are to safeguard and oversee the heritage of the community, specifically the built environment, foster civic and neighborhood pride, encourage stabilization of those historical assets, and number 4, probably most importantly, giving our residents an opportunity to get tax relief through property taxes to help offset the cost of taking care of those buildings. All right, next slide, please. So the things that we're not tasked with, I'll just kind of throw in there, is we're not obstructive. We don't mean to get in the way of progress. We don't dictate to property owners what they can and can't do with their property unless they take advantage of that tax break. But we are advocates and we are educators to help the community learn and appreciate the uniqueness that we have. And so some of our past accomplishments include receiving grants, We've done training, we've put together the forms that we need for property owners to be listed on the local register. We're creating resource guides on how to help assist property owners to be sensitive when they look at impacting their building. We've designed outreach brochures, we've worked on our websites, we've sponsored public workshops, and we do have 2 properties on a local register. So next slide. That's the Rosebush House, so our first resident on the local register, and the Harsh Building, our first commercial building. And we've also been encouraging people as we get close to the centennial of Millwood as a city to recognize, again, some of those historic structures. So we've started off with decals. There are property owners that are living in buildings that are 100 years old or have businesses that are 100 years old. They can receive recognition and also learn a little bit more. So that was one of the things that we've been trying to do. Next slide. And the things that we can do to work towards our centennial. We're not event planners. That's not the purpose of the commission. But things that we can do would be to encourage more residents and business owners to participate in that local register by providing guidance on how to write those proposals, and also helping to identify more potential properties that we can include. Next slide. So some properties that we've identified, of course, is the Brown Building or the corner doors. And you can see rich history there, very iconic in our downtown. Next. We also have the Buckland House, which are the Sinclairs, and then the Salmon's House, where the Youngs live. That's great. All right, and next. Other potential projects that we were starting with the Preservation Commission, we were looking at how we can identify our historic district through street signs that give it that character. We were working with students at West Valley High School and also been contacted by the Hutton Settlement and try to get them involved in our community and in the history of it. We've been working with the Argonne Library over the past years for Millwood History Month, and also May, which is Preservation History Month. And then I understand that next May, 2025, the Northwest Museum of Arts and Cultural will be having their Mother's Day walking tour in Millwood again. Okay. What we need to be successful is we need to resume regular meetings. As a commission, we haven't met since May of 2023. And there are many reasons for that. We understand that. And one is, having a committed staff that can help us put those meetings together. We need to appoint or retain active community members to be on the commission, and also possibly identify financial resource to help us with our goals, whether it's with more publications, with research, direct mailings, those things, just to bring that together. So there is more we can do. We do hope to serve our community and protect those valuable resources. And I just want to thank you for having the few minutes to kind of bring you up to speed on the commission, and thank you very much.
Questions for Chris, because I'd like to just take a few minutes while we have the chair here and kind of talk through just a few things to council. First of all, I think with the departure of Christina, we lost a valuable resource in someone who was willing to participate and could participate at the staff level in a number of different things. We have a contract planner to assist with the planning commission. It has been hard, if not impossible, at least on this side of the state, for us to find a preservationist that we could contract as the preservation person to be the city's liaison or the city's representative on the Historic Preservation Commission, on the HPC. Chris and I had a meeting and we kind of talked through that, and we have 2 individuals. If I printed up the Historic Preservation guidelines. We have two individuals who have the technical knowledge, have the resource background in Ms. Major and Dr. Oaks that sit on the planning commission. So we have the technical knowledge. And we have individuals that we have reached out and contacted because we have in the past had some attendance issues where we've had difficulties making quorums to move stuff through and just not always a full billet to have that. And the people that we have reached out to who are sitting on the commission now, they are still very much passionate about being on the commission. And so at this point, given talking to Chris, I've talked to Brian, Mr. Wurst. Mr. Wurst will serve as the city's liaison, as the city's rep, because of the legal side, he can keep them in check. Chris and Dr. Oaks can be the technical folks, and together they have a pretty good idea of how to go forward with the idea that here in the city, we will backstop their decisions, or we'll backstop their efforts. If they're almost done with the resource guide. And so once that resource guide is finalized, the city can produce that, place it on the web, make some paper copies, things like that. But then it would be up to Historic Preservation Commission to work internally and kind of drive internally to work with the city or work with other local institutions like Millwood History Enthusiasts, Millwood Community Association, Millwood Neighborhood Advocates, to get the word out and work with those folks. And then potentially, if we need, or if they need, if we as the city or they as the commission need other resources for grant funding and things like that, the folks down at Spokane City County Historic Preservation Office have been, I guess, a good resource. And they have some knowledgeable people on staff down there that could assist us with sorts of things for grant funding and those types of ideas.
Right, and we've got a great relationship with the head of the CLG program through Washington State too, so.
So the goal would be, I think, have at the first of the year, get out a meeting notice, get everybody back in the room, get Mr. Wurst there, and basically get that resource guide up and running and done, and then let our folks on the because it just dropped off. Let the folks on the actual commission get back and start using their outreach efforts and working in the community, because we have the videos, we have all the other guidance, we've done all the hard work to be a
certified local government and offer
CLG, thank you.
this great benefit to residents, but we just need to do more education and advocacy, because I think there is a misunderstanding that we tell people what they can and can't do with their property, and we don't do that. We can offer them resources and help coach them on the right way of doing things, but we can't. And people just need to know that we have that valuable resource here.
And so for the valuable resource is the tax abatement. Once you, I mean, there is the valuable resource aesthetically, but if you're looking at, for someone who owns one, if you're looking at things like period windows and things like that, tax abatement helps. And so we talked with Mr. Wurst, you get what from the county? It's 20,
like 25%. I know Bobby's done more research, but you have to, the work that you do on the building has to fall within the Secretary of Interior standards for historic preservation and amount to about 25% of the assessed value of the property. And if you're on the local register and you meet those guidelines, over several years, you can get tax credit that would equal what you've put into.
I've asked Brian to research whether or not that's at the county level, to whether or not it would be possible also then for the city to offer some sort of abatement on our property taxes, and perhaps incentivize or sweeten that pot if we were to offer that level of abatement, because combining those two abatements could make it more attractive, and so that would be a better, more incentive. But as when I was talking to Chris, it's not supposed to be easy to be on the register.
No, it's difficult. Our work is to try to make it easier and to walk people through the process. And it's also, we, again, kind of going back, we realize the importance of our historic district, the buildings, and just trying to preserve that, because it does make our community special.
So, any further questions? Sean?
So Chris, are there any prerequisites to get onto the commission?
There are a set of, I think, 5 to 7 criteria and that are listed in our paperwork. And being at least 50 years old is one of them, which there are a lot more properties. It doesn't have to just be the historic district. There are a lot of properties now in the city that could qualify to be on the local register.
Did you mean
I
commit?
actually meant the personnel to join to help you on.
Oh, I'm sorry, not to get on the local, okay, I thought you had a building that you wanted to get in.
I didn't want to say anything when you said you had to be at least 50. I don't want to see how this was going to play out. So that was funny.
Darn it, okay.
There are a certain number of individuals that have to have a type of background in what would be considered historic preservation or history or things like that.
And I
it
think
isn't all architecture.
And I think we said that 2 of our commissioners need to be residents of. 3, so 3 need to be residents, but others can be outside the city, but still have some connection with Millwood.
So if you're interested, I did print off 1522, which is the historic preservation, and 152240 outlines who the criteria and what and all that. So, yeah, it is an investment that the city has made. Tom Richardson kicked it off in the past. We are at a point, the HPC has done a lot of good work, and that should be well noted. But it has been difficult from a staffing perspective to make sure that we can hold those meetings and have somebody from the city that can follow OPMA and public records and keep all that in line. I think having Brian there with the knowledge that we have from the chair and other members on is a good compromise, and at least gets the ball rolling.
Well, I would like to thank the chair and Dr. Oaks for your perseverance and leadership during this interregnum period and getting it going again. I look forward to 100-year celebration. So is there a subcommittee that might be developed that's full of citizens that aren't plugged into the bigger work but are excited about celebrating our 100-year anniversary?
Well, I think that there are probably people even in this room that might be interested in contributing to that. Yeah, we'd hope so, because, 100 years is a big deal.
Absolutely. I think that you would have actual other citizens that aren't part of the current interfold that would be very interested in contributing. Thank you.
Shannon.
Do I understand right that the historical place doesn't need to be in the historical district?
Correct.
It can be anywhere in the city.
In the, city limits, if it meets the criteria for the property to be on the local register, yeah, it
Not
could
that
qualify.
one, not just the
Yes.
district.
And then could also take advantage of its tax incentives.
I think that we need to certainly get that word out when we get fired up here. I think the support that we have a lot of other residences, especially in the city, that would qualify and should qualify.
Absolutely.
Well, and we would hope that this group could interface with the other community groups that we have in the area to spread that word and get that word out amongst people that we have this program, we have this ability, and
All right.
Thank you very much. Yeah. So we'll get talking so we can start.
It doesn't have to be Thursday night, because that's Gonzaga women's play.
Understood.
See you there.
So that brings us to our next item, which is a presentation from Nisha Manini at Welch Comer on the water and wastewater 2025 budget recommendations.
All right. My name is Nisha Mayani, and I work at 5620 East Desmet in Spokane Valley. So we will go on to the next slide. So the purpose of this presentation tonight is really to back up before we provide you recommendations. First, introduce priority projects and potential funding strategies for those projects, and then that is what leads into what we've put together for the budget recommendations for 2025. So the projects I'll talk about is the cast iron water main replacement, water master plan, and GIS and sewer master plan. Go ahead to the next slide. So cast iron water main replacement, the city has 4,700 feet of cast iron pipe remaining in the system. This pipe is over 70 years old, and as you can see there on the left, it's at the end, if not beyond, its useful life. The city's been experiencing more frequent breaks and repairs on these lines. And every time there is a break on the line, it's a potential for contamination to enter the system. And this is also something where that break started as likely a pinhole, so it had been leaking for some time. And though the city's made a lot of progress in reducing loss over the last many years, there's the loss in the system is still at 18%, which is above the state standard of 10%. And it's likely, again, due to these cast iron mains that remain in the system. And then one other thing to add on that, I just want to say this doesn't get better with age. And so that is why we're here kind of moving this thing forward. Okay. So the map to the left there is the blue. Those blue areas are all of the remaining cast iron pipe in the system. The city has been collecting somewhere around $50,000 a year to put towards capital improvements and has been doing their best to eliminate cast iron in the system. Unfortunately, as we're seeing, and especially after the COVID year, which COVID gets blamed for everything still, we've seen high inflation, which has not helped the issue of making progress on eliminating these cast iron mains. So while the city's plan has been, to eliminate 300 to 1,000 feet at a time using that funds, what we see is that is not enough. And when we look at the Grace Waterline project that we completed this year, the average price for that was $633 a foot, which is huge. And I would say just before 2020, that would have been less than $300 a foot. So that's what we're seeing. There is another reason for that high price, and that high price is when we do the smaller projects, 300, 500, less than 1,000 feet at a time, there's a cost inefficiency to that in construction and mobilization. So that's part of that high number there. All right, go ahead to the next. So what we've been talking about is accomplishing the remainder of this 4,700 feet in one or two projects. And the pros of that are we'd see in just putting out one single project an anticipated savings of 15 to 20%. And again, that's in just the cost efficiency of doing it all at once. There'd also be additional savings in interim repair costs where the city's not having to dig up and put on a repair band and then restore these areas where you've had a break. And it's also, a way to reduce the city's liability associated with those main breaks, because every time you have a main break, you have a potential for property damage. The cons of this is it will likely, based on current funds, it's going to require some sort of rate increase and most likely a loan. We are estimating to replace the remainder of that 4,700 feet, if it was done as one package, would be about $2.6 million. That does include a 20% contingency, and these are big numbers because we're talking budget right now. And so we want to make sure that we have enough money ultimately for the city to accomplish the work. I'm going to ask you actually to go one more slide and then we'll come back to this one. So when we talk about loans, we will talk about the pay-as-you-go as well, but we've been talking about potential funding sources, and there are two really good ones that Washington State has that are low-interest loans. And when you look at these interest rates and consider where we are with inflation, it's actually becomes a little bit hard not to look at loans. So the Washington State Public Works Board, they currently have loans at 1.71% for 20 years, and the DWSRF is at 2.25% for 20 years. In order to apply for these sources, you have to have an approved water system plan. It has to be current and include the full scope of the project in the plan. So your plan covers some of the projects that we're talking about, some of the cast iron, but not all of it. And then there's just some additional updates that we would recommend to the water system plan, and I'll talk about that later. These are competitive loans. To rank high for these loans, those applicants that show readiness to proceed, where you've completed the environmental work and design or portions of the design, those are applications that rank higher. Okay, so I want to show, yes, thank you. I want to show just what this might look like. And this is really just to show the power of those low interest loans as far as rate impact goes. So in option one, that would be funding, increasing your current rates in order to pay as you go, fund $300,000 per year for 10 years to accomplish what remains. So that would require, we estimate, $28 per month, an increase on your rate. When we look at the low interest loan option, with those interest rates again, and over 20 years, that would equate to a debt service if we did the whole project, and we're not saying we're doing all, this is just for demonstration purposes, but that would be a debt service of $17 to $18 per month, which you already have a portion of your capital improvement plan rate within your rate. So taking that out, that net increase would be more like $11 to $12. When we look at this over 20 years, you would still, our estimation is you'd still be saving 8% with a low interest loan, even though it's going for 20 years. Okay. So with that said, a strategy moving forward and in particularly the 2025 budget cycle would be to consider budgeting $25,000 to complete a water system plan update. That would also include GIS mapping, and I'll talk about that a little bit more in the next slide. And then budget up to $200,000 to complete environmental and design phase services, which would be for the whole project. If we designed the whole project at once and then you would have, and you received funding for the project, a loan or whatnot, you could bid pieces as a base bid and add alternates. So you could decide, depending on your budget, which pieces you would do. And then, of course, apply for Public Works Board and or DWSRF funds for for that full replacement. And okay, and then the Water Master Plan and GIS. So just going back to the Water Master Plan, The last one was completed in 2018. It technically expires in 2028. If you go after Public Works Board money, they require the plan to be up to date within 5 years. So we're just beyond that for next year. And then additionally, there's a few things in the water master plan that deserve an update, considering that was done in 2018, and we look at what inflation has done since 2018. Our recommendation is to do a good update to the capital improvement plan as a whole. And then another piece of that water master plan would be developing water system GIS. This gives the city the ability to capture your current institutional knowledge. It gives Kyle and Matt the ability to access the mapping in the field when they're repairing leaks and need to know where the next valve is, rather than trying to do that in a different way. Additionally, this gives you an asset management tool, which is also something that will give you additional points on a funding application. So now switching over to sewer, we've been talking a lot about water. We've also been having some discussions about sewer. And it's been pretty quiet on the sewer front because your wastewater system is pretty new. It's installed in the 1990s. It's got an anticipated useful life of 75 years. You are about 60% through that, which is kind of crazy. But there is no current sewer master plan or formal capital improvement plan for the sewer system, and it hasn't been fully assessed since it was installed. So it seems like it's about time to do that. And one of the triggers for this discussion was the update to the treatment agreement with Spokane County. So having or considering developing and adopting a sewer master plan would be something that we would see as an asset to the city in managing your priorities and setting your rates in the future, and then just being prepared for any issues that might arise as the system starts aging, and if anything comes out of discussion on the treatment side of things with the county. The recommended budget for that would be $60,000. So, in summary, these are the two items for capital improvement items for the water and wastewater, $225,000 on the water side and $60,000 on the sewer side. And I'll add one last thing on that before we go into any questions. DWSRF also has pre-construction loan money, which may be something to look into as far as that cast iron water main replacement. That piece there, they review those on a quarterly basis, those applications, and those are 0% loans for 10 years. So if the city finds that they don't have the reserve right now to do that is something that we can look into as well. And with that, I'll take any questions.
Questions? Mr. Sander?
Well, now is a good time because the SRF fund in particular has cash.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
It's a good time to be applying. And so if we're thinking of this, I think it would be a good time for us to get our water system plan updated. And it would not be a major update. I think the biggest thing is just reorganizing it because DOH wants the different order now.
Yeah.
But just to update that, have current information and dollars, and go for it. I think also, doing it at the same time would be maybe doing if you're going to do GIS, it would be a good thing to. You're out there in the field trying to get these lat longs for things, and there's a sewer manhole. It's a great time to marry those things into a combined GIS system.
Yeah.
Sewer is mostly done. In fact, I think Daniel would say sewer is pretty much dialed in. That was our easier one to bring in and get done. Water is actually physically out there in the field bringing things in.
The other question did we replace the entire sewer system?
Yes,
Yeah,
Even the very old parts?
yes.
It's all PVC now
Okay.
that we have.
We had some, I think Paul would say in some of the older areas, some of the stubs were still, some of the original stubs that were not ours were not replaced.
Yeah, there's probably still side sewer services out there that are possibly Clay or Orangeburg. But I think those are going by the wayside too. They, are susceptible to roots getting into the joints and stuff, and they're on their way out for sure if they're still out there. But those are all on the residence sides of the.
I carry around some pieces of clay our water lines that was installed in 1913. And the lines are beautiful, except they're mortar joints. And the willow and tree roots just really love to get them. So these beautiful pipes are just split in half, just like poof, just because of the joints.
Other questions? This will figure in to the budget discussion that we will be having later on, both for water and for sewer. It is also yet another reason why, and I don't expect action tonight. It is just back on your agenda for the wholesale water service to consider again. And we can talk about that when we're there. But as we move through the budget items, we will end up with a discussion on that as well. So other questions? Thank you very much, Nisha. Appreciate it.
yeah.
So then, that ends our presentations for this evening. That brings us to item number 6, which is our public comments concerning action items. We did receive 2 public comments by email. Those are at your desk regarding action items tonight. One is regarding ordinance 545. The other is regarding the 544 and 545. So those are before you tonight. Have we received any other public comments other than these 2 here?
No, there was one remark, but that was in the packet.
Right, but that's
No other
no
comments.
other comments concerning the action items tonight. So that is number 6. So number 7, do we need an executive session this evening? No,
Unless anybody on the council, Mayor.
no executive session. So that brings us for our action items for this evening. Item number 8, which is our first item for first reading, ordinance for 546, the 2025 preliminary budget. At the conclusion of the presentation, we will open a public hearing on this ordinance. So, Ms. Matkin, our treasurer.
Dim the lights on your way. Dim the lights on your way. I'm gonna make you work, yeah. You're gonna have to work.
You're not the dim light, it's.
Might be. You never know.
Am I on here? Okay. I'm gonna do this from up here because I always feel like I'm giving my presentation to Matt and Kyle, and they don't need to know. It's a secret. So these are the results of our survey. Coming in number 1 is law enforcement. Interestingly enough, 69% would pay more tax if necessary. Next slide.
Debbie, can you just tell the council briefly for the sample size, how many respondents you actually received?
So we only got less than 10%. Less than 10% sent them in.
So it was 52,
56.
56. So we have,
Yeah.
so our, just be aware that the sample size here
Is very small.
is very small.
Yeah. I don't know what we can do to get it up there higher, except maybe get it out there earlier in the year and continuously until we should, I'd like to see about, ideally, half, half the city.
Don't you think, though, that if we advertise next year, I mean, the first year never has a very good,
It doesn't have a great turnout.
and we were competing against another survey, so.
Well, here's my differentiation there. The comprehensive plan survey was at markets where there were more than just our citizens. So, yeah. So anybody at Millwood Days or anything could scan that code and give their answers. So it doesn't necessarily reflect the wants of our citizens. So these were the questions in order. So next was code enforcement. There's the results. It's between, about fourth, fifth place. It kind of ties with some other things, but keep going. Road maintenance, actually, more people cared about that than law enforcement. It just skewed differently. So it looks like it's law enforcement, but it came in, 2 and 3. You know what I mean? I mean, but that's not how we scored it. And Daniel worked on this a lot, so we thank him for that. Keep going. Snow and ice, see, people are willing to pay more for that. And it was definitely in the top 5. So keep going, just to kind of get, we're not going to hang our hats on this, but just to kind of get an idea. And at the end, once you see, they look weird. Then we tried to put them all on one pie. That did not go well. Because really what you have is 10 questions, rating it 10, and then yes or no. So it's about 300 or 400 variables there. That was the result. About what I thought it was going to be. There were a couple that surprised me, but for the most part, that's what I expected. So, and anybody have any questions on the survey, or is that all good? Yeah? Okay, let's go into the budget. Okay, first slide, we're going to talk about the general fund. Well, you can't see the colors on there, can you? Okay, well, that's going to make things interesting. So historically, we have on the left. The way I've changed this, see where it says operating contingency reserves assigned. So those are assigned by our financial policy, and what has been happening is that is part of the budget that you can't spend. You'd be violating your own policy by spending it. So I took that, and I took motor vehicle fuel tax because it has a restricted use, and the auditor wants to see it outside of the general fund. The idea being that it does have a very restricted use, and if it's just run in the fund, you could feasibly be buying a park toy with that. I mean, there's no way of knowing, so we need it elsewhere for auditing. So next screen, I'm going to come back to that. Your expenditures. See how big those are? You have a lot of proposed expenditures, especially in capital, and we'll list those out fully later, but you see 3.9 million there in capital expenditures. So that coupled with removing those contingencies and the motor vehicle fuel tax out, it drops your ending fund balance to 828,036 in the general. Going to the next slide, however, you can see I've created this assigned. So there's your $739,000. You just can't spend it. Sorry. And next slide. This is just our unemployment. Nobody ever gets fired, so we don't use it. There's REIT. It was coming in a little bit higher this year. We've had some fairly decent sized properties sell, and so that's where that stems from. But I just don't know if it's going to hold, if it's going to increase, if it's going to decrease. So we're going to be conservative and put it at $25,000 for next year. And you can see we are building up a pretty good fund balance in both of those. Oh boy, here's the utility fund. So again, operating and contingency reserves, they really belong in a capital because those are not even committed. Those are really restricted by our contract. It says assigned, but really it is restricted. So that starts our utility fund at $307,066 or $664. Now, water sales, we're looking at if we have no increase to the rate, we're looking at 330 or 353. Don't have my proper glasses with me. But if you drop down into the expenditures, you'll see that the expenditures are $440,000. So pretty big gap there. I have it written down as, $87,000 or so. So we have to figure that out. And then sewer, we are not short nearly as much, but still quite a bit. Enough, 9,000 or so. And then the sewer fees that we collect on behalf of Spokane County and the payout, I have moved to the new fund farther down. So in all, if we do that, we have a remaining fund balance of $521,916, which looks a lot better than if we have that other stuff back in there. If you go to the next slide. So here's where we talk about the capital. So up at the top is your restricted uses. Can't use that. Then we have the balance that we're carrying over from 2022, 2023, and will be 2024 of $157,000 in capital. 70,000 coming in roughly puts you at 227 roughly. Then there's your capital coming out. Total capital projects for water equate to 253.5 with a deficit of 26,000 at the end.
So just to be clear, this water capital fund includes the outlays for capital expenditures for 2025. At this time includes the water system plan update as recommended by Welchcomer and the $200,000 for the actual full design for a cast iron replacement at this time. So that's $225,000 in there of what you would consider to be extra expenditure for a specific project. That, one-time one-time expense. So I wanted to make that clear that this is not in it, then there's not that money in addition to, this money is there. This money has been budgeted out as if we were to go forward with that, so we can see the effects on the budget if we were to go forward with those recommendations for the cast iron replacement. Because regardless, we need to do the water system plan update, because we need, if we're going to stay in compliance with DOH and also position ourselves for any sort of future revolving loan funds, we need to have that level of plan done. Some of this, just to be clear, some of this may be a little confusing, but the idea is, in discussion with the treasurer, is to give us a clearer picture of the difference between operating and capital. And we've kind of run everything together as a homogeneous fund, because originally the directives from the state auditor have always been, don't have a lot of funds.
Yeah.
You want as few funds as possible. You want everything very streamlined. But I think in some respects the auditors changed their tune, and in other respects we've realized that it doesn't give the best and clearest accounting picture, particularly with respect to how we are accruing capital resources, capital funding resources, and how we're spending those capital funding resources, having it all lumped into one fund. So Debbie brought forth the idea of splitting these out as managerial funds, so we can actually track these funds independently. So that's why you see this shift now to pulling things out and having smaller numbers at the bottom, because we've taken out the capital we have and put it into dedicated capital funds so we can track that. Sorry.
Right. No, that's quite all right. And like the mayor said, these are just managerial. They'll all roll up to their parent funds, because the auditor doesn't want to see all that. They only want to see the one. So this is purely for me and Kevin and you and the public to see what it really is. So, okay. Moving on. And then there's sewer capital, which that 45,000 or so was committed long ago. We don't have an improvement fee in capital. So like Nisha said, that's something we're definitely going to want to look at. The treatment fee and subsequent treatment charge is paid out of this fund for county sewer. Just because it's not our money, strictly. And then there's your capital expenditures and your ending capital balance of negative 3,000.
So the better thing about having these capital funds is, if we were to roll it all back to one fund, we wouldn't show negative numbers, because we'd be slowly continuing to pull out of the operation fund. And yes, there'd be a decreasing balance in those funds, but it's important from the operation of our enterprise systems, running the water system, running the sewer system, that we see that, particularly for water, because right now water's more expensive, but also for sewer, our capital accruement, which basically is rates, there's no capital, we don't have a set capital improvement fee for sewer. So we have nothing out there to begin to position ourselves if in 40% of the rest of our life we have to begin upgrading our pipes and et cetera for that. And for water, we really, the cast iron project will have to be done at some point, because we can see it in the water losses. We're not substantial in the water project. We're not substantial in the water capital fund. But it allows us at the city. It allows city staff to present to you the best breakdown basically of where, if rate increases need to be taken, or if items need to be delayed, or if loans need to be obtained, where we are assigning those, because we can see that, yes, in our operation fund, we are having a decrease in overall fund balance, but it isn't it's significant, but we can look at that. Then how do you address capital for water? How do you address capital for sewer? So, please.
Okay, so this is just kind of a demonstration. One line is your fund balance, the other line is your expenditures. Really easy to see why the fund balance will be going down when the expenditures are going up. And there's a lot of contributing factors. In the last 10 years, inflation has gone up 33%. So it's driving up the cost of everything. I know that insurance has gone up double in the last 5 years. So then there's a lot of contributing factors, but those are just easy ones to throw out there.
Our electric rates
Oh,
for actually operating the system from the water side of things. Sewer, we just operate 3 lift stations, but from the pumping side of things, the electric rates have gone up.
a lot. So, and then these are just all the capital expenditures and where they're coming from, what they're being paid out of. So with the exception of the 2 that have the grants right now, it's pretty much all us at this time. That's all I have for you tonight.
So, questions from council before we open the public hearing? I'm gonna turn up the light.
Say if we go ahead with the iron pipe replacement, might look at a loan.
Well, and I think that would be a discussion with Nisha and Welch and then our funding agencies, because we would need to be prepared. If I remember right from the Public Works Board, I don't know what it is with drinking water. The largest loans they give out are like $10 million, and those are to pretty large municipalities for pretty broad projects. I'm not really sure where we would be in the queue for the size of the city and the project we have. So, should council decide to authorize the design phase of that, in other words, committing us to going ahead with the capital replacement, I think we would want to look at a few different potential funding lines. One would be, both of the Public Works Trust Fund loans and then the DRF. We may want to consider, if we're going to seriously do it all at once, we may want to look at bonding it from an enterprise side so we can get that level of funding all at once. So there are a few other options. It pretty much depends on, should council decide that they want to go ahead and pursue that project. I do think that based on everything we've heard, piecemealing it is not going to be there is a savings on magnitude. So we may not want to consider piecemealing it, but that's a decision that needs to be made. Shannon.
Well, I think that we do have some options that, again, depending on financing, if we do the whole thing or just maybe half of the thing. But I need to get our TIP thing out again, but I know Liberty is on that list. And there's no, could be done at the same time or just previously, so we don't have to pay for pavement replacement for the water line. Cause that normally is about half the price, it's just putting the pavement back together. So there's some opportunities there for us to combine, and I don't, sorry, Kyle, I don't remember the whole list, but I know Liberty was on there. And I don't know if any other water lines are on there, streets with those water lines in there. I don't think they were, but they might be. So I think that makes sense. And I think, again, who knows long-term, I'm thinking, another, 3-4 years down the road, what monies will be there available. Because right now, the money is available because part of it's the Infrastructure Act and the lead and copper stuff has been all poured in, and we're not going to touch that, but that relieves the demand on the rest of those things. So,
And do you know if we've ever done that in the past? Look at the master plan of the water and then also look at what road projects we have going on?
I don't know if we have, because we really haven't had, since I've been on the council, we haven't had that many.
Yeah, this is a new idea.
And Grace and just a couple other little stretches. But, this is a big one.
Fair. Thank you.
One thing I do have to add is that if any of you have gone to the state auditor's website and looked at the FIT tool, what's causing me the most heartburn is the state auditor has now placed our enterprise funds in the cautionary mode, which means they're watching us. They're watching and their reasoning is declining fund balance.
And so what does that mean?
What was their reasoning? I'm sorry.
Declining fund balance. So, we want to make them happy so that we don't, that's a thing that people who are funding or purchasing bonds, that's a thing that they're gonna look at when they're buying even municipal bonds. So, we need to fix it.
We are still digging out from 16 years of no rate increases. It's hard to make up capital funds when prices continue to go up and you're not bringing in anything else. As she said, from 2014 to now, 30-some%, at least 3% year over year in inflation. And that doesn't account, that just is inflation in the operating realm. If we're not building capital funds for things we have to do, those funds continue to come out of the excess that we were generating in operational funds by combining all those funds. That's one of the keys to this separation of the funds, is that we can see where we are lacking in capital and where we are lacking potentially in operation. In the long term, it's important to realize that we have not added new services. We have not added any new services significantly since the construction of the 55 and over community. And we are probably not going to continue to add significant amounts of new services. We're not, it's hard to grow our way out of this. Expanding service boundary and selling new service to new people, physical service we're kind of there. We're not, as we've seen, it's hard to, our current zoning favors single family. So as is desired by the citizens. So you're kind of pinched into that box as to how you want to continue to account for things like inflation and just general cost increase.
Listen, I think we do need to do something. I mean, you know, we're the 18% water loss. I mean, we're pumping 100 gallons and only getting paid for 82 gallons. And that's not good business.
Well, even if you choose not to take on the cast iron replacement project, we still have deficiencies in the funding mechanisms. We still are not meeting what we need to in the operational fund. We're still not meeting what we need to. We have no capital fund for sewer.
None whatsoever.
So-
And you have to pass a utilities budget that earns. It's not like a governmental fund. It's actually supposed to make money. So, not lose money. So, before we can pass the budget even in 7 days, we gotta fix that somehow or remove some stuff. And I don't envy you, cause I'm not, that's your job. I don't know what to do.
So other questions for Debbie on the budget? Luckily, at this time, our general fund is looking good.
It's looking pretty good.
We have,
So that's
we will have some discussions about property taxes coming up during the mayor's report. But sales tax and property tax revenues are consistent with what we need to operate. So, any other questions? So it is now, if there's no other questions, it is now 7:06 p.m. And at this time, I will open the public hearing on ordinance 546, the 2025 preliminary budget. First call, did you set one up, Lisa, for the preliminary budget?
I did not.
Okay,
give
that's
a
fine.
separate sheet for the.
Okay, that's fine. So, anyone who wishes to make comments on the budget as presented this evening, knowing that we will have, we will revisit this for its adoption next week at a special meeting. First call. Second call for comments. Third and final call for public comments. Seeing no public comments, I will close the public hearing at 7:07 p.m. with the note that there were no comments made. And at that time, this was a first reading, so public hearing. So there is no action to be taken. As I just said, this ordinance will be presented for consideration to the council at a special meeting to be held at 6 p.m. next Tuesday, so on the 19th, for this action. So that brings us to item number 9, our action items for consideration this evening. First up is our consent agenda, consisting of the October regular meeting minutes, the October's treasurer's report, and the October 2024 claims and payroll. Does anyone desire or need to take any of those items separately?
Kevin,
Yes.
there has been a slight Scrivener's error reported that I would like to fix on the minutes, but I don't know that it really needs to be
Well,
taken out.
Yeah, it does. So we'll pull it. So because there is a Scrivener's error, we will take the council meeting minutes up in a separate motion. So at this time, don't see anyone jumping to the fore. So do I have a motion on the consent agenda tonight consisting of the treasurer's report and the claims and payroll for October 2024?
I make a motion to accept that consent agenda as presented.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Any discussion? Yes, Mr. Sander.
some of the public comments we received on the Spokane off-street parking.
We'll take that one up. That's down on the,
That's on J of,
yeah, we're gonna get to it. Let's
okay,
get-
what are we
yeah,
taking?
It's I.
Just J.
A.
Yeah, 9A, not everything. So,
Oh, just the consent agenda.
yeah, just the consent agenda. It would be nice if we could just approve everything. Anyway, so just the consent agenda and just the consent agenda consisting of the treasurer's report and the payroll and claims. Any other discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none opposed, the treasurer's report and the claims and payroll are approved. And so for the council regular meeting minutes, we had a request for an adjustment to the minutes. That adjustment was,
I inadvertently forgot to put the species name in one of the council remarks.
And I did not mean for it to go
And
this
so-
far.
Oh, no,
I
we
just
just-
merely said, I also thank the city
I know.
staff and and that was not reflected in the meeting minutes. So I did not mean it to turn into
I
this.
but I wrote
Yeah.
so
so I'll fix that.
do you know whether we were gonna
Yes.
amend that out?
Yeah, we gotta reflect the amendment that needs to be acted on.
Which item? Do we know real quick?
13 council remarks.
13, council remarks. So is, okay. For given the amendment to note that, Ms. BC also, noted, thanks, do we have a motion on accepting that amendment to the minutes?
I'll make a motion to accept that amendment to minutes under item 13, council remarks.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? Seeing or hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none opposed, the amended meeting minutes are approved for October. Thank you. And so that brings us to item B, the special event permit for the 2024 Winterfest Christmas Market. This is a recurring event, and so it is in your packet. Does anyone have any questions regarding this event or the permit? Do I have a motion on said permit?
Make a motion to approve the special evening event permit.
Second?
I'll second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? Seeing or hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none opposed, the special event permit for the 2024 Winterfest Christmas Market is approved. Thank you. That brings us to C, a change order for the asphalt patching project for Diamond Construction. Kyle, you want to walk us through this one real quick?
I remember the deal from last month. It was basically additional traffic control and some additional square yards added to the patching.
Any questions for Kyle on this? Presented last month? Anything?
I make a motion to approve change order for Diamond Construction asphalt patching project.
Second.
Oh, yeah, second over there.
Any discussion? Seeing or hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none opposed, change order for the asphalt patching project is approved. Item D, the bid presentation for the tree removal and pruning project. Kyle?
So on this one, I misspoke last time, even though I thought I had talked to everybody I needed to talk to about taking the bid that was $356 higher or whatever it was. Apparently, we'd be going against our own rules and regulations if we did that. We have to follow the MRSC guidelines, which says the ABC Consulting is the lowest bid. And I have nothing bad to say about them. I'm sure they'll do great work, so we can't throw it out, which is fine. So I ask you guys to approve the lowest bid for ABC Consulting Arborist, and we'll get going on the tree work.
I make a motion to approve the bid for tree removal and pruning.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Any discussion? Seeing or hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none opposed, the bid for tree removal and pruning in the amount of $54,177.75 is awarded to ABC Consulting Arborists. Thank you. Next is the grant award from the TIB for the Empire Chip Seal Preservation Project. Kyle.
So this one we've also been talking about for a few months now. This was the chip seal project on Empire / traffic calming for the narrowing the lanes and adding another bike lane to the south side. It was $80,000 projected to do the entire project, with the match amount for the city being responsible for $4,211.
Questions for Kyle on this? Do I have a motion on accepting the grant from Transportation Improvement Board in the amount of $80,000 for the Empire Chip Seal Preservation Project, understanding that the city will commit a match of $4,211?
I'll make a motion to approve the grant award for the Empire Chip Seal project.
Is there a second?
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? Seeing or hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you very much. Grant will get that signed, and Kyle can start thinking about getting that on the books for next year. So that brings us to item F, Resolution 2024-05, the 2025 Property Tax Levy Certification. This, Debbie, you want to take this one?
There are no changes from last month. The resolution is ready to go.
Any questions on this? So the actual levy amount from the previous year increases by $933.39. 9,000. Wow, sorry. 9,000. Any questions? I have a motion on resolution 2024-05 as presented.
I make a motion to accept resolution 2024-05 as presented.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? Seeing or hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none opposed, the levy certification for 2025 is passed. And now that brings us to the resolution 2024-06, identifying the ad valorem tax. One for the state, one for the county. It's the same resolution, just in different forms slightly.
I make a motion to approve resolution 2024-06.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? Seeing or hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none opposed, the resolution's passed unanimously. Thank you very much. And that brings us to ordinance 543, which is the 2024 budget amendment. So this is our first reading.
First touch.
This is our first touch.
Oh, this is the budget.
This is the budget.
I'm sorry.
That's why I'm confused.
Yeah.
Done this
I
one.
do have a change from last month. We have added $40,000 to water professional services.
That was in your thing, wasn't it?
Which covered expenses on the water line replacement project.
It's engineering and one of the panels at the well. I think it was New Park when they brought the generator in and all the reprogramming and stuff that had to be done for that.
This one in the yellow, right?
So any questions on the budget amendment? This is basically right sizing us for the end of the year, as we always do. Typically we do this twice, but we decided this year in expedience, we would just do
So
it
did
once.
we there it is.
It is in your packet, but I
It
will
is
put
in your packet,
I will
yeah.
put it up, just so to refresh your memory, but it is in the packet, and it was in yellow, so you would notice it.
And so just to summarize, this is just us basically reading into ordinance adjustments that we've already approved and made and already done,
Absolutely.
Yeah, we're just amending.
so that we can reconcile for your end.
Bingo.
Okay,
Yes.
There we go.
This is the memorialization of all other decisions that have been made regarding the budget over the year.
Right. Is it in there? Yes, I think that was changed.
Any questions? Do I have a motion on ordinance 543 as presented?
I'll make a motion to adopt ordinance 543 as presented for the final budget for the year 2024.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? Seeing or hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Are there any opposed? Hearing none opposed, ordinance 543 is passed unanimously. Thank you. So that brings us to our fun ones. Ordinance 544, which is an adoption by reference for Spokane County's off-street parking and loading standards. Millwood Municipal Code Section 17.
Please. Just one moment. I need a moment.
Did we get booted?
I believe so. Just give me a moment.
We'll have a timeout on the
recess?
floor.
No,
Well,
it's just-
At some point, we are discussing with Comcast getting a different upload, download speed locked in because they can still throttle us. And so even though we pay for business class, and so what seems to happen is that sometimes if we have high upload, so it's, yeah, we have to ask for.
We're good, we're good. We're
Okay,
good.
we're back?
We're good.
All right.
It was okay. It was good.
Excellent.
Okay.
Okay, so I read all that ordinance. Do I need to, I don't wanna reread that. So it's the off-street parking standards. So Amanda, I will start this discussion. Amanda, there was some concern about parking ordinances in the city that stemmed out of the subdivision or the Magnolia. And so Amanda brought this before us as a way to potentially adopt parking ordinances consistent with the county for adoption by reference, that we would not have to create our own. However, at this point, I think, Councilmember Culler, you wanted to take the lead on this, so I will turn this to you.
Yeah, so I went through all of the chapter 14802 from the county. And really, the ordinance we were adopting was just gonna say that we would adopt this as may be amended, and when it doesn't conflict with our current code. There's a lot of stuff in here that would conflict with our current code. So with Amanda stepping back, I was gonna try to take the lead and go through this and basically pull out the pieces of that we need to define off-street parking size for the spots. I mean, that was something Councilman Stravens had raised, was that we have no definition of a parking spot for off-street parking. So instead of adopting the entire county's chapter by reference, and there's a lot of inconsistencies in there and undefined terms that don't mesh with our existing municipal code. It'd be better if we took what we wanted from that and adopt that into our code rather than do it by reference, by incorporation by reference. So with the planning commission backed up on the comp plan and updating, I was gonna take a stab at it and shop it around to us, give it back to Amanda to go through, and then we can vote on it. Instead of adopting this in wholesale, unless anybody has any other thoughts in taking all the county's definitions.
No, I don't think we do that.
That sounds wise.
but I do wanna thank you for letting us have a second touch on this, because this was presented last time, let's just do it, no, and this is why we do second touch, because it gives us more careful reflection, we can tap the expertise within our council.
Yep,
Agreed.
yep, sounds good.
So, yeah, the last time we went through just the highlighted sections, if you dig in through the rest of this,
Yeah.
there's a lot of limitations that conflict with our existing code. So, I don't know how we proceed.
Just table it.
Brian, do we just table this and come back?
Yeah.
That's what we were just trying to figure
Yeah.
out. I regardless of the revisions or, you know, what it looks like now as compared to what you would adopt in the future. From a record keeping purposes, it is easier for the city to have numerical ordinances in our ordinance book. We have a gap that causes confusion for our code reviser and the rest of us in the future.
Okay.
So let's just table 544, recognizing that it may, and let me know if I can assist you on that as we go through.
So, it appears that it's the council's pleasure that at this time, we table ordinance 544 for future consideration, after opportunities to amend. Do I have a motion?
I'll make a motion to table, what is this ordinance, 544? 544 until council can revisit the issue.
I second.
Any discussion?
Good move.
Yeah. Seeing or hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none opposed, 544 is tabled for future consideration at a time to be determined. So that brings us to ordinance 545, the wholesale water service. I will take that. I bring that back to council, not expecting it to be passed tonight, but just to keep it on your radar. We have made revisions to the general text of it based on comments from Mr. Wurst and based on comments from Mr. Dempsey, also including some responses in there to some public comment that we received. But I wanted to bring this back just to have it here because we're having these discussions on water and sewer rates, particularly water rate. And the point I will make again, we're not expanding our service area. Wholesale of water is a way for us to virtually expand our service area. Otherwise, we are going to continue to bear the burden solely within our area, solely within our limited service area of operating a Group A public water system supplying how many connections? 899 connections. And so this doesn't lock us into selling water to anyone. Anything that would be sold, any sort of agreement, that would be a contractual agreement that would come to the council later. What it does by doing this is saying we have the mechanism in place that we are able to wholesale water. But we need to start coming up with some creative ideas in order to bolster the revenue to the water system. And I still think that there are some misconceptions regarding our water rights. Once again, we don't own that water. That's not our water. We have a right to take so much water. But the water that's in there isn't Millwood's with a fence around it. And so by putting to beneficial use what we have available to us to use, we could potentially increase the rate base, which would hopefully keep everything more distributed in some respects. Otherwise, because I can guarantee you when we start working these numbers for what it's going to take to get capital budgets up on these things to where the state auditor does not have concerns for going concern issues, it's not gonna be just the $5 we have on there now. Because 38% increase in inflation, and it doesn't look like it's coming down, but I don't think we're gonna see deflation anytime soon. We're just getting into the disinflation area, which is better. But we're still looking at 3% easy year over year. So, yes.
Yeah, so I have a few questions actually. Thank you for clarifying that this is just the infrastructure or the parameters of what we would do. This isn't us saying like we're going to go and do it tomorrow. But when you talk about this as a way to mitigate some of the budgetary things, especially the 2025, you're not foreseeing that this is going to be reconciled to address the 2025
No.
budget, correct? This is more long-term conversation about we have got a permanent problem that's not going to go away and we need to start coming up with a permanent answer. Perfect.
Yes.
I just wanted to make sure the time horizon was kind of out there because I know some people think we're like gonna vote on this tonight and we're gonna start selling water tonight. I would like to bring some more expertise to the table, specifically around leasing. I know Andy or Council Member Van Hees did mention leasing once and you indicated that that wasn't a possibility. And I did put my feelers out in Whatcom because I have no basis of knowledge of this, but they are the second and third. There was this big adjudication that happened in central Washington, and then the other two adjudications that are currently going on. One is in Whatcom, of which I spent a fair amount of time in, and then another place. And so a lot of the things we're anticipatorily responding to as we do this are things that are still being decided because there's only ever been one successful adjudication. And I put my feelers out and they said that a lot of people do leasing.
They do leasing in water bank areas. We would have to put our water rights into the water bank. And we don't get you don't realize the same income as placing it in the water bank. What it does is it allows, and there is a significant amount of discussion as if you can even put inchoate rights in the water bank because they're not real wet rights. If you have a proven right that has been perfected, put to beneficial use and perfected, and you are not going to use that right, say, I'm not gonna farm there for 5 years. Mm-hmm. That right's fully perfected. Yes, you can put that in the lease, in the water bank. Somebody else can lease that right. That maintains the perfected use of that right. You don't go into the lose it phase. Mm-hmm. And so yes, you can lease water that way. That's also a different type of right. We have municipal rights, and most of our municipal rights are still, the bulk of our municipal right are inchoate right, which means we have still not perfected that right.
Okay.
So
and that, at that point, I was under the impression we were relinquishing, we're selling our water right. And I was unaware that that's not what it is.
So that was another clarification I would like for us to have in public, in be on record. That's my understanding as well, as you especially read this ordinance as it reads. We're talking about, we're wholesaling the usage of our water in order to ramp up our usage. But should, like, say, Millwood actually be able to cap out? We have not sold, like, parcels that the lawyer went through and say, oh, well, we just sold our 1984 rights. Is that a factual understanding?
We're not selling any rights. First of all, the most recent Burbank decision, you can't sell inchoate municipal rights.
Okay.
If you are talking from a standpoint of what can you sell, you can only sell rights that have been perfected under beneficial use. And then, yes, you can technically transfer a perfected water right regardless of if it is municipal, industrial, domestic, irrigation. You can sell that right. That is not considered in this.
Can I just ask for layman's terms? Did you just say that, let's say we came up with a partner that wants to buy, our wholesale usage, and then we perfected it. So we actually got to the maximum level of what our rights were, then and only then could we sell it. You can't sell the potential, you can only sell the use that is in current active use.
That is correct. You could, a future council, if that right was perfected, could determine that right could be sold.
Okay.
If it is perfected.
I have some other questions because we have to actually have conversations about some of these are complex details and they're all still being determined. But if we were to wholesale, let's say we found another town and they wanted to build pipes and then we sell them use of our water, are we allowed to sell it at a higher rate than we are currently charging our citizens?
We can but there are parameters established to how much you can charge for. You can't you can't be like selling water to a man in the desert sort of thing.
Can't gouge.
You have to have a basis for the rate you are charging. And that basis can encompass a number of factors. It can encompass capital improvements to your own system, operation of your own system, maintenance of your own system, all those sorts of stuff. But you can't have all those and then go plus $20.
So no, but you answered my question, and that certainly wouldn't be in a question that I would not be advocating for us to gouge people. But our current problem is because we do not even cover our break-even cost. And so we have an accelerating use and a disparity between the use and what it costs. I would not be inclined to then open up our doors, give people access to our water and say, and you also can have a non-sustainable situation. And we'll charge you exactly what we're charging our citizens. And if we're going to just close the gap, then we're kind of having So do you see what I'm saying? I think we should be able to charge them at what break even is, even though we're not currently charging our citizens at what break even is.
A lot of this would depend upon always the starting basis for your rate discussions are your current rates. And therefore, if you would have a very poor argument to a willing buyer showing them that you were basically trying to have your residents pay nothing and your brokered folks pay everything, because there is rule in how we set our rates. We have to set our rates to be sustainable. We don't have a choice. That's part of being a going concern. And so if we can demonstrate that our rates are set, that it preserves at a minimum our operation of our system, and that we are accruing capital money and things like that, then we have a basis on which we can say, here's the rate we are offering you.
So to clarify what you just said, we have acknowledged multiple times during this discussion, currently we're not charging people what it costs to actually get them water. You're saying in order for us to open up the doors and then give new people money and make sure we're at a break-even rate, that's automatically going to accelerate the rate closure of all of our citizens at that time.
It will set a rate per whatever you are charging that is grounded in reality. And you don't have to encompass all of the capital vision in there that you need to have sustainable in that capital fund. What it does do is the rate that's there would allow you to have, because as Debbie said, systems are supposed to make money. It adds more services, be they virtual, because you're putting water in a pipe. You are selling water to someone. You're selling them as same commodity as if we were to sell our leaves. It's a commodity that is placed out there and sold. And so by selling that commodity, you increase the amount of funds that you're bringing into the system without being really able to add new physical connections to new physical residents, either residential or commercial or industrial.
Can I just add one thing too? The rates are set by resolution of the council in section 3. So again, this isn't even committing you to a rate structure. That's gonna come back to you at the time a contract comes to you for approval, assuming that, if it does, because again, it's gonna take a willing buyer and a willing seller.
Yep.
There's a willing buyer of wholesale water, that'll come back to you in a resolution, but for that first contract, you're gonna have to adopt a resolution first that sets that, and there's gonna be an analysis that goes into what that rate is in the resolution itself.
Dan, I know you were gonna say something. I do have one more thing though at the end.
Well, I think our current rate structure is the cost of just, we have a water system, but we also have the consumption cost. And that is what we're just gonna be selling water. It wouldn't make much difference if that water goes across our border, or if we have, you know, a big water user within the city. You know, we're just selling water. It made me, you know, it's not gonna go into our sewer system, thank God, you know, so, but that's what their sewer rates are based on, you know, but
Right.
overall, it's just, we're selling more
Just
water.
water. So, and we're not even really, I mean, the only difference is the power, and we know what it costs per cubic foot to produce it. So, I mean,
You know,
be
when
pretty
we
easy.
came up with the new rate structure, you put a lot of work in trying to figure out what is, you know, how, you know, if we didn't sell it.
Nisha and I
dying,
put a lot
the
of work
water,
into this.
we still have a lot of expenses, and that's what their fixed cost is for connection.
Yeah,
And then, you know, oh, by the way, now the pump turns on, and then the power company comes, and all those other factors
Yeah.
that go into actually running that pump,
right.
which we're paying for anyway now in our overage, you know, in our consumption fee.
Right.
And if we just have somebody else to share in that cost,
And, you know, the mayor and I were talking about, and of course, you know, we're gonna put in a new pipe and ship it over there, right? But there's no real overhead on that.
So to clarify what I'm hearing you say is you're saying, Shauna, you just told us that there was this big break even and we don't want to sell it at the subsidized rate, but you're saying it's not really a subsidized rate, it's just our rate because ours isn't break even because we actually have to tend to our infrastructure. This new water, we don't actually have to tend to the infrastructure, that's their problem.
Correct.
Okay,
Yes.
fair, just getting it all out on the table.
Yep.
Can you all see though the benefit for us to have some detailed conversations with the public? Because if we were to, I think that this is an innovative solution to a long-term problem, but I do resist the hastiness of it. And then let's just get it done. And, you know, I think it needs to be carefully considered what the future ramifications are. And I also think it needs to be considered how it's going to land on someone who said, hey, the city council just sold our water rights. I know that's not what we're doing, but you understand that's the common understanding. And then our rates went up like next month or the next year because eventually we will need to tackle our disparity, our lack of break even. So I think we need to have some full disclosure conversations about that full palette of understanding before we just.
What more information do you need? I guess is that what we need to, I mean, we're on, I think, third or fourth month of this, and I know that there's been development with consultants for probably about a year on this, just to get to this point. So what more information do you need so we can ensure that the council has some comfort level with even considering this at some point in the future?
I feel like I understand it now. I mean, I came into it thinking, oh, those are my water rights. I'm not selling those, and I'm not. And now that I've educated myself and I've been educated, then I'm more comfortable with this conversation. I think there's going to be members of the public that aren't.
But we can mitigate that by actually coming up with a communication plan, and I think that is what this one brought up. Sometimes when we approve these things to move forward, we should be considering the communication plan. We should be the ones that are thinking about, okay, and then putting that back into it so it's reflected in the thing before we vote on it. Do you know what I'm saying?
Oh, I do.
I absolutely believe this needs to be accompanied with some kind of communication plan to even explain just the broad strokes. Because we have been listening to it for a few months, 3 or 4, and I understand there was all this planning going on for a year plus in advance, but I wasn't privy to any of that stuff. And it just now is starting to, and I'm a pretty intelligent person, so I'm just gonna say, if it's just now starting to click for me, I feel like there needs to be some two-way dialogue around that, and that needs to be
I
reflected.
don't know the best way to get to public. You know, I mean, we're not building new infrastructure, we're not putting in pipes, we're not digging trenches. We're just allowing them water.
Allowing them to buy water. from
Well,
us.
we don't touch it.
To buy water via a contract that will come back to you.
Right.
Yeah.
For review,
So,
vetting.
So the ordinance is just the framework
yeah.
to allow for that. So maybe we put a note in the next water bill or the next newsletter about this, explaining some of
And
the
if there's
framework.
if there's a cry, if there's a outreach by the public after giving them a notice, then we can set up a meeting or a workshop where we can discuss it.
That sounds good.
I mean, I went to this thing called Our Water, Our Future that was put on by the Riverkeeper. And I have never been so pro water in my life after going to that thing. It was amazing. I didn't realize what we waste.
Yeah.
So, I mean, more education, the better.
Back to the ordinance, how much more time do we need? Because I'd be ready to approve this at the next meeting. I mean, it's basically the framework, but there's no contract defined. We haven't started talking to any other water districts.
I would agree with you, Sean. I would also be willing to approve this at the second meeting. I wonder that just like it says, and we'll bring this back to the council and all these other things, if there couldn't be just one thing that says, that exhibits that that there's a commitment to an effort of public outreach.
I think that's on us, honestly.
Well, I guess public outreach is a very broad topic. I mean, how does council wish to communicate to the public? And does council want to write this themselves, or what?
I thought we were doing this in partnership, and just like you identified a problem and then suggested an answer, I'm identifying a problem and I'm open to any and all the answer, but I don't think us just moving forward without any consideration of how we're gonna communicate to the public. I don't have a well choreographed communication plan. I'm be curious, you've done plenty of communication plans. What are your visions? But I'm just calling out a very real need. If we vote this through, no explanation, and then raise rates on top of that,
Well, city can come up with a fact sheet that I guess we could pass around at the next meeting and solicit comments from the council on that fact sheet, and then it could go out to the residents. It's not, if council's looking for me to pick this up, it's gonna be, I got work. So I can't sit down and write the fact sheet right now. I could task the attorneys to do it, but you're not gonna, but
He's got
we're not
nothing to
gonna-
do.
Well, I don't
we're
know
not
what the
talking-
concerns are. I'm not the one that's
Yeah.
out there in the community receiving the concerns, right? So if you are receiving concerns and misunderstanding.
The concern would be
everything else,
that,
That's,
or if we act on selling water and then our rates go up, how come they're going up when we're taking in revenue from selling water?
Well, because
But,
There's no
but,
revenue.
we're not in
No.
a position to do it
exactly,
for
exactly.
quite some time.
We need to communicate that if we do this,
I'm not asking you to write it.
the rates won't go up as fast. Because rates are gonna go up regardless. We
Yeah, I
can't
mean,
fund
that's-
our own capital fund.
We're just used to, in this community for 16 years, not having an increase.
And the increases that we have instituted over time
Yeah, so,
Haven't been
are
enough.
basically just trying to make up for the 16 years.
yeah, we're just putting a patch on it.
you said that you would be willing to put together a fact sheet. That's what I heard. And I think Sean's talked about putting something in the next water bill. I think those are all really good suggestions. I don't think I'm bringing up something that's extremely,
You're not, but it's a timing thing, because if the fact sheet's going in the water bill, the fact sheet there is the potential that the city could have it done
I don't think you would see this until January at the
Yeah.
earliest, possibly February.
The Jan,
So, if you.
we're talking about voting on this in December. I'm not like, oh, this is hostage until my fact sheet is out in the paper. I'm merely.
Well, I think you're misconstruing what I'm saying. It's a matter of the timing of the billing to get the.
Yeah,
to get the fact sheet that covers what you guys would like to have it communicated, to then get it into a billing cycle, that then, so I think we're probably 2 billing cycles out.
Yeah, no,
So
it's-
February, I'm just more looking for a commitment or some awareness that we should have a corresponding communication.
I don't see the point in putting out a communication. I don't see the point in voting on this until the communication's gone out and the community has had the opportunity to respond and voice concerns to you, the council, who would be voting on that. I don't see that. I mean, there's no point in sending out a communique. If the intent is to foster discussion and to receive comment from the public on this, then we should have the communication go out and then have and then bring it back to council at that point.
So you're actually more conservative than I am then in this regard, because because what I thought we were agreeing upon was just merely a framework. And there will be a lag time between the framework, of which you're going to bring back the plan someday. But my thought is, before that plan comes back, I want to have a pulse on what the community thinks. I want to make sure that we at least know where the knowledge deficit is to start informing the knowledge deficit. Unless you believe that, oh yeah, we vote on this and you actually have a plan that could be presented in the next couple months.
I guess when you say plan, are you talking about a plan for how we would sell water?
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought I was being very clear. I wanted to start a two-way conversation to educate that there is a disparity between what we pay and the break-even rate of what it costs to have water. We're also appear as a group to be working affirmatively towards potentially wholesaling our water. I wanted to make those facts known and then also give some nuance to those facts to the public so that they aren't like, hey, I heard they're selling our water and then our bill went up. That's as simple as the problem I'm trying to solve is like, I think we need to have an affirmative, proactive communication. So, I mean, if you had a fact sheet that came out in the water bill in February, to me, that is a great first step. And unless we were gonna literally approve an actual agreement with a specific town before then, I was still prepared to vote on this next month, but that's fine. You're more conservative.
I would be willing to work and draft some things up. I need somebody else to help make it look nice. I can give up some thoughts.
If you wanna take a first draft and send it over to me, I'm happy to wordsmith and add my 2 cents on, as the initial proponent of this, and what the benefit is, and then how it couples and decouples from the actual rate structure itself. We can talk that through. I would prefer that the council have a voice in this, and if that's you, Mr. Sander, or if it's you and Ms. BC or whatever, however that works, just so that communication has the flavor of the council in it, and then we can take it and add the other stuff. I think there is some level of that we can't hang the sign out that says for sale and then have some potential that there would be the opportunity to say, well, we're not gonna sell. But we hung the sign out, because when we pass this, this means that we can enter into discussions with other purveyors who may want to purchase water. They might look at us and go, no, we're not gonna do that, or we're gonna go find something else. But it gives us the framework to be able to positively enter into discussions with a prospective purchaser. The idea would be that if we entered into those discussions and the terms were acceptable, that because we hung the sign out, we're gonna sell.
Sure.
And so I think if the idea is transparency and education and communication, we should do the communication and the transparency and the education prior to even passing this? Or
Well,
prior to even considering
I
it?
will agree with your wisdom and thank you for protecting me from myself and
Yeah.
my conservative nature.
Sounds good.
But I will say, this is warranted because I have been thinking about this for 3 months and am just now getting a full understanding, and I'm not a complete idiot. So that tells me that there is more work that needs to be done to connect some dots.
There's always gonna be question. There's
I
always
get
gonna
it,
be-
but then, but a reasonable,
Oh, yeah.
you know, a reasonable understanding from reasonable people who are engaged in the process is all we can ask for. And I think we are just now breaking through to a full understanding, even amongst ourselves, of what we're talking about.
So because this is in the items for consideration, I would like to ask the council for a motion to table this, table this ordinance until a future time.
Motion to table ordinance 545 wholesale water service until a future date.
Second.
Second or third, fourth.
Moved and fourthed. All in favor? Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Ordinance 545 is tabled to a later date. Thank you very much. So now this brings us to our reports. First up is our treasurer's report. Ms. Mackin.
Well, I've been doing work on the budget and still having the audit is still ongoing. It's getting really close to the end. They're actually waiting on me at this point, but you know, I have to make a budget. So, it's hopefully when we get this all locked in, I'll get that done and we'll get them out of my hair and then I can go back to normal. Thanks. Any questions?
Any questions for our treasurer? Ms. Castles, Clerk, Public Records and Code Enforcement. Oh, did you have a question? I'm sorry.
Well, I can do it with coming down with council comments here.
Okay. Ms. Castles.
Currently, we have no public records requests. We've got it all done with Brian's help. And there are 7 outstanding code enforcement issues right now. And that's what I have.
Any questions?
Just piggyback on what she said, because the legal report follows in the code enforcement. Continuing to still work through voluntary compliance as opposed to coming back to you, asking for authorization to commence litigation. It is hard on some of these continual cases that spend a lot of resources on the code enforcement side. Nonetheless, we have at least 2 that the city can rightly be in the course of litigation, but we're still trying to work through the voluntary compliance side, so, okay. Thank you.
Any questions? So facilities, Mr. Shebe.
1st of November, we winterized, cleaned, and locked the park bathrooms for the season. We brought our leaf vac down. I'm sure you guys have all seen it out and around by now. We brought it down. We got it and the trucks all washed and waxed and the leaf boxes installed. On the 28th of October, we officially started sucking leaves. And between that and our own leaves, the 4 of us have been plenty busy. As of this afternoon, we've sucked up 49 loads total so far. And judging by what's left on the trees and what's on the ground, I feel like we're roughly 3/4 of the way done. Our final day for pickup will be Monday, the 25th of November, weather permitting. So make sure you have your piles raked out that Sunday prior, because once we come by, we are not coming by again. That is it. Also, if you see people out and about, if you could ask them to keep their piles in the 2 to 3 foot wide range, that really helps us out a lot. The job's a pain in the butt enough, and if you're trying to swing that hose and get 5, 6, 7, 8 feet out there, there's a big difference between 8 feet of swinging and 2 feet of swinging. So anything everybody could do to help out would be muchly appreciated. We also took possession of our new pull behind air compressor. And when we have a day here or there when we feel we're all caught up sucking leaves and stuff, we've been going out and blowing out all our sprinkler systems in our green areas and stuff. We got the park and the trail left to do, and then pole meters and backflow devices for the winter. Should be good to go. Any questions?
Questions? Thank you very much, Kyle. Mr. Erdahl, utilities.
Yeah, I always get nervous this time of year taking water samples with all the blowouts. That's usually when we get our hits, but everything came back good last month, so we got a few more to get through. LJ Oil came out and they filled the generator down at Old Park, 284 gallons of fuel. We winterized all the pump houses, got them all ready for the cold. We'll be switching over to Butler shortly because we're just not using a lot of water right now. In sewer, we cleaned all the floats at the lift stations, and we noticed we were having more starts than usual at lift station 3. So we called RC Worst, they came out, and we had a bad stop float, so they replaced that, and everything seems to be working now.
Questions for Matt? Thank you very much. Ms. Tanyo could not be here tonight, but you do have in your packet our planner's report from her. Permit and license, periodic update. She has been working on the periodic update. Tomorrow is a meeting of the steering committee of elected officials to discuss the methodology for the housing for all assignments in Spokane County. We have put our methodology in, and so we will be determining the method to be used, if it is method A, B, C, or some sort of modified method or combination of therein. But then we will understand what the expected long-term housing goals are for us and everyone else in the county. So yeah, if you have any questions, let me know or let Amanda know. Mr. Worst, legal report.
Nothing further than has been reported. Happy to answer any questions, council.
Thank you for what you were saying earlier about some, you guys are doing all this stuff around code enforcement and then you have to keep coming back to us. Is there like parameters that you would want us to consider at some point, or?
Really, we bring it back to the council for approval to commence litigation. And so really for us, we try not to come back to you for approval unless there's been no effort by the property owner to address the code enforcement issue. We were close this month, but we they are at least showing some effort to comply, or else we're at least in discussions and communications with the property owners to move it forward to compliance. If we get the brush off, if we completely get, as the kids call, ghosted by the property owner, we will be back before you, because there's nothing we can do without going to court, getting an abatement order from the court and pursuing it that way. It's not, it abates the nuisance, which for those around, the property owners around the nuisance, that's a problem. But it's not cost effective in any way, shape, or form for the city. So if we can get the property owner to bring the code into compliance, it's quicker, it addresses the code issue, and it's a more affordable option for the city.
Well, I want to thank you for all you're doing, and honestly, mostly we ever hear, the negative parts about code enforcement. I've heard a couple very positive things in the last month about like, hey, there's a couple properties that have been continual problematics and they're coming to closure, and so kudos to all involved.
Nope. Lisa's done a good job stepping up, and it's she doesn't get positive phone calls in those, right? It's hard to take a code enforcement complaint in, and it's hard to process it with the property owner because it's typically there's always some sort of emotion that goes with it, and sometimes there's an explanation behind why the code enforcement issue hasn't been addressed by the property owner. But she's done a really good job of minimizing my need to get involved, and so yeah, thank you.
Any other follow-up questions for Brian? So mayor's report, just been working with Debbie on budgeting issues and preparing for the 2025 budget. We have had one recent development in the city, and I wanted to bring this to your attention, but this will be something that we will have addressed by the county. after the new year. We were recently advised by the county assessor's office that Inland Empire Paper had asked for and had received a reevaluation of their property. They have substantially changed the taxable valuation of the mill property itself. The 2024 assessment was roughly $83 million. The 2025 assessment is about $27 million. So they've had a reduction in taxable value of about $50 million.
That wasn't the tax amount, that was the tax value to the property.
That was the tax value to the property. This will result in a tax shift within the city. The county will explain how that tax shift will work. It does not only affect us, it affects anybody that IEP is contained within the district, so it also affects West Valley School District, Fire District, Spokane Valley Fire County. So there is more to come on that. That just happened last week. And so we're still trying to figure out what the potential impacts to our residents are. It's important to understand that this is because we say it's a tax shift, the city's income will not be impacted, but tax burden will be shifted from IEP to others in the city. And how that works, the county is still working on running through different scenarios on how that shift will work. So that was last week's information. This is not a secret. The new valuation is posted on the website or on the assessor's webpage, so this is public information. I know nothing more other than the reduction in value. The whys and wherefores as to why the valuation was changed and the methods used to assess the property and how they arrived at the new valuation, I can't speak to that. Hopefully, the county would be able to provide that information at some point in the future. Beyond that, we continue to work forward on the water issue. Just kind of trying to wrap up for year end. Most everything that we have been working on here has been presented as part of the 2025 planning. You have attached in your packet the final design sheets for the Argonne project. That is, I believe we're going to look at putting that out for bid. I think in December, with bid opening sometime in January for that. A number of the public concerns that could be addressed within the project were addressed. We were able to rectify the issue with the narrow sidewalk along Gerber's building, so we have full width, nice wide sidewalk there. Taking into account some other things, Kyle will be working on some pieces of bike connectivity for the Empire as we do the Empire overlay, and we look forward to getting that bid. So, any questions for me on anything? And I seriously mean I have a limited amount of information other than this was the old value, this is the new value, there's gonna be a tax shift. We'll get ready and we'll be happy to come out and talk to you about it. So that's kind of where I'm sitting in with that. So there's no, like I said, there's no great secret, there's nothing I can provide from behind the curtain. Any other questions? Excellent. So that brings us to our council information, which, as you saw in there, is the Spokane County Sheriff's Office Intelligence Report. Oh, and we're working with the Sheriff's Office on getting ready for January 25 for the Millwood deputy. So that is still proceeding as it can. Got the intelligence report for September. You have the final design sheets for the project, and you have Mr. Gillis's summary of kind of what was expressed during the open houses. So that's in there. And now we are to public remarks. You have the boards. So we have one public remark by writing in regards to the historic preservation from Ms. Oaks that was delivered. And on the board tonight, we have Joe Ward. Mr. Ward is our first speaker tonight. Please.
My name is Joe Ward. My address is 15102 North Tormey Road. It's out at Long Lake. And I've had 3 mini strokes, so I can't remember names very well, and I have hard times putting thoughts together. My significant other, Rosina, is here tonight. She kept banging me with her elbow and saying, "You're pretty close to that 100-year mark." I'm 76 years old, soon to be 77. I nodded back off, and she hit me again and goes, "Look at that, useful life of that water pipe, 75 years old." Then I'm sitting there and I nod off again. She hits me again and goes, "Look, leakage, that's you too." So it's well past my bedtime. Normally I get up at 4 o'clock in the morning, and I'm in bed by now. I came here today because I stopped in at the office to talk to Lisa about a code violation that I'm involved in. I own some property, actually my family does. I've given it away, most of it. I'm still the manager of an LLC called Badinsky Residential.
Sir, I'd remind you that we usually try to keep this to about 2 minutes.
Okay. So I stopped, I was told by, I got an email today or a text today from one of the tenants in my building that I own the building, or we own the building, the family does, at the corner, be the northeast corner of east-south Riverway and Argonne, or the southwest quadrant of the Spokane River and Argonne Road. The message that came in it said, this came from my property manager. It says, "Hi Sabrina, this is Suzanne from apartment number 2. I need your assistance for a few items. First, I wanted to tell you that today I saw a homeless looking man walking out of the parking lot when I got home. About 20 minutes later, I had a knock on my door and I opened thinking it was a delivery I was waiting for, and it was the same man. He said, 'I saw you walking into your place. Do you want an F-bomb?'" Okay? This isn't the first time this has happened. And I'd be one of those people that vote for more law enforcement. I just want to share with you some of the things that have happened here on my property and in the community here. In the last 30 days, we've had 3 shootings at Safeway. That's my understanding, in that parking lot up there. Most of them are drug related. In my property, we've had 2 women that have been accosted that live there. We've had several car break-ins. We've had a $15,000 Harley-Davidson motorcycle stolen. We've had several pieces of equipment. I've been remodeling it over there. Several pieces of equipment. I chain them up, lock it. They pop the lock with, whatever. We've had one person that came through sleeping on one of the lounge chairs in the back. Okay, so we've got a couple of issues. I have a code violation. I put up a 6-foot fence over there, and the code says you can only put up 24 inches or 28 inches. I don't know what it is.
42.
Sounds good to me. And mine's significantly higher than that. But what I did is I went over to take care of the lady that was accosted today, and because she thought she saw the guy again over across the street. And if I were to call the police department, because I own some other properties in the valley, and they're all county and whatnot. And what happens is they don't come out. I mean, sometimes it's 4 or 5 hours later by the time they get there. But you have a half-width right-of-way right across the street from my property. that is not being used. It's right behind the All For Automotive, and it goes from east-south Riverway to the next street up. Don't know what the name of it is. And it's not being used. And I took pictures out there, and there were something like 45 half or pint little 1 ounce bottles of liquor and quarts and half thing. And in fact, I got over there today, took a picture of it appeared to be a homeless guy, and I'd like to see that fenced off. I'd be happy to pay for half of it if we fenced it off on both ends. But what I notice is a lot of homeless people go down that half-width right away, and they just park over there doing drugs and drinking, and you know, there was one there today, took a picture of it. I came over here to talk about that, and that's one of the reasons that I was putting a fence up out in front of the property over there, and I screwed up, my fence builder screwed up, and we're working through that, but I think that it would be really nice if we fenced that thing off. And like I said, I'd be willing to pay for half of it, but you need to fence it off both ends. I've been over there and sent a weed eater through there because they hide there.
Gonna have to ask you to wrap up.
Okay.
So we will,
Thank you.
thank you, noted, and we will talk with Kyle about that.
Okay.
So next up, we have Rosina. No, that's same, so.
That's right. You want to talk?
Okay, thank you very much. Bobby BC, please.
Wanted to address a few things on the Argonne widening project. I came to all the meetings. I'm still not convinced that it's a good idea. But I did want to acknowledge that the engineers at Welch Comer took some of our suggestions seriously. I really like the extra 2 to 3 feet of additional width of sidewalk by Gerber. I don't know if I'll really be any safer, but I'll certainly feel a lot safer from it being there, and I'm sure other pedestrians will too. In that same spirit of everybody working together to make what I think is a questionable project, but to make it as good as it can be, I'd like to suggest that our Preservation Commission take a look at the decorative lighting styles. The ones that were shown on the posters at the meetings were very inappropriate. They were mid-1800s Victorian style, and our buildings were all built in the 20th century, mostly 1920s, 30s, and 40s. At one point, there was some lighting years ago voted on that was appropriate. If that's what they're using, great, but our Preservation Commission would know this, and they'd be a great place to